What is going on, Internet? Eric Bandholt's back again with another e-commerce conversations. I hope all is well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Jack. What's up, man?
I'm doing well. Other side of the pond, actually.
Yeah,
Other side, the
yeah.
other side of the pond. Yeah,
All
no, I'm
right.
doing really well. We have some
You're
amazing weather here in London for once, so I'm really happy.
you're my second British guest in a row, so people really might think I'm over in Britain right now.
Oh, really? Have you been to the UK before?
Yes, yeah, I've been to London and Bournemouth is where one of my team members is, and then I've been up to Glasgow and Belfast. So
Yeah,
got my rounds. I haven't hit up Wales yet, or the Isle of Man, but pretty much everything else, I guess.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's funny because I was actually born in the US, but I've lived most of my life in the UK. My parents are British, so I kind of have got used to both sides of the pond, and whenever I'm in one, miss the other. So yeah.
Well, why don't you tell our guests who the heck you are, what the heck you do?
Yep. So my name's Jack. I'm the founder of Cancha. Cancha means court in Spanish. We design customizable sport and travel bags, sort of modular, so different accessories that attach on to bags for work and sport and play, and kind of being able to make it easy transition between all of those. My background really is in tennis, so I spent a lot of my life playing tennis. I picked up the bug while I lived in the US and tried to make it professionally. So spent a lot of my time as a teenager training many hours and traveling as I got older to tournaments and trying to make it, trying to be the next Federer really. And yeah, so I learned a lot on during that experience. Got really very lucky in the sense that I was able to travel a lot and see different places all around the world and pick up languages. So Spanish and French being the main two for me, and living a lot of time in those countries, and yeah, so that's kind of how I got started into everything. And just before the pandemic, was just sort of started to design bags for myself as a traveling athlete, trying to make it easier to travel and carry everything around with me and be on planes and buses and trains and go from the court to the city to maybe somewhere outdoors. And so that kind of transition type of thing was something I really wanted for myself, and then started to kind of get into the world of soft goods design, which I knew nothing about, but it was a really cool experience. And then during the pandemic, I kind of wasn't able to play, wasn't able to travel, wasn't able to do any of that sort of stuff. So really just hunkered down on Cancha and learning all things ecom and building and trying to build it out. And it kind of just caught the bug for that during that time, and it's sort of taken over ever since.
So you hung up your racket? Is that what they call when you?
Yeah, yeah, there we are. Well, I still play quite a bit. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm still very active, and I think that's kind of something I kind of learned over time in terms of a lot of my life. I was trying to play at sort of the peak level, trying to get to the very top, and now I enjoy being active sport from more of a recreational side, and it's just as fun, quite honestly. I still enjoy it, still play a lot. It's kind of my outlet to when things aren't going so well on the business side. But and I think that's a lot of what we're trying to be about, is kind of empowering people to be more active and to fit it into their daily routines and make it easier to travel to the gym after work or on the court or wherever it is.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. You're chasing to become the next Federer, or the first Jack Oswald, right?
I like
That's
that
what
one.
you really wanted to be. Like nobody wants to be, the next Roger Federer. They want to create their own name. And at a certain point, you realize that was not a realistic option, or was it the commitment to the game, or walk me through that process of how you transitioned from chasing your dream of being a professional tennis player to, enjoying the sport.
Yeah, I think it's quite a long transition, to be honest. I think when you're a kid, you dream of making it, and there's no one's going to stop you. And because it's so far, and it seems so far in the future, you just keep going towards that goal. And of course, when you get there at a time where you need to kind of start making some moves, and tennis is notoriously quite a difficult sport to make a living in. Only the top 150 players in the world just can survive, really. Top 100 make a decent living, but maybe if you're 150 or so, you can survive. After that, you're losing money, essentially. And so it's a really difficult sport to make it in. And whereas something like maybe if you're the top 2,000 soccer player in the world, you can definitely make a good living. So it's a tough sport. And so, yeah, I think I gave it everything I had. I was traveling a lot, and you go through a lot of ups and downs when you're on tour. And I think it's sort of helped a lot in the early stages of starting Cancha, because every week you're starting from scratch, essentially, in a tournament, and you're trying to make money to survive. You're trying to stay in as long as you can. How you do in this tournament depends on whether you can get into the next tournament, rankings, all those sorts of things are really, really difficult. And there's a huge amount of competition. And of course, it's not always 100% equal either, because other people have more resources at their disposal. Are they traveling with a coach? Are they doing it more scrappily? Are they sleeping somewhere nice every night, or are they sleeping on the floor? It just depends. All those sort of factors have an effect. And of course, there's a physicality of it as well. I'm not the tallest of players, so I think not to say that is 100% why, but I think all these things kind of tend to have an effect, and the mental side is huge as well. And I think you get better at that over time, but it is really difficult to travel on your own, to be going from place to place, and also when you're not doing so well, if maybe you have a bad streak or something, trying to come back from that is really, really hard. So just from that side of things, it was really hard. And I think that it gets to a point, I guess, where you have to kind of decide what you want to do with things. And I think I might have continued for longer if it weren't for Cancha and discovering a passion for something else as well. I think a lot of my friends and colleagues in that area struggled in that because they weren't sure what they were going to do next. And I got quite lucky there. But I think it is really difficult because you put your life towards something, and then if it doesn't quite work out how you hoped, I mean, other thing is that you could get injured, right? You could be at the top of your game, right, and have all the opportunity in the world, but if you break a leg or something, that could be it. So it is a hard transition. And I think right after when I started to realize that maybe this wasn't going to be, a continued path for me. I think the year and a half after that, I still hadn't quite, assimilated it in my mind. I still kind of was half competing, half not, and still doing Cancha a lot. And it sort of just had to be a gradual transition because I couldn't come to terms with it straight away.
So, yeah, how old were you at the time?
So I'm 29 now. I think I stopped playing when I was about 25, 26. So it's not been that long, maybe 3 or 4 years.
You alluded to this, but were you one of those guys traveling alone, no coach? Would you share a hotel room with competitors or other people in the tour?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't travel with a coach. Maybe once or twice shared a coach between 4, 5, 6 other players, but it didn't really happen very often. A lot of time traveling on your own, and you try and travel with friends as much as you can because it makes a massive difference to the experience. But everyone has different schedules. Their rankings going up and down. They might get into a tournament that you won't get into. They might be moving in a different direction from you. They might play better on clay and want to be in South America, and you might want to be being in like Eastern Europe somewhere. And it's very hard to make those schedules work. So it's very, very difficult. So yeah, I mean, I had lots of experience sleeping on the floor, not having somewhere to stay sometimes. And most people play at that level can relate to that. So there's only a few people that maybe if they're very good when they're young, they might get a lot of funding at the beginning, kind of helps them sort of bypass that whole trajectory. So yeah, it is quite difficult sometimes, but amazing experience as well. Like, I mean, seeing places in the world that I wouldn't have been able to see otherwise. And so it's kind of ups and downs.
And if you don't mind, I'm curious about the financials of this. So you're not a top 150 player. Are there tournament fees that you have to pay to enter into the tournament?
Yes, there are. It depends on the tournament. I mean, you'd also get prize money even if you lose first round. I think so. The lowest level to get right into the financials, like the lowest level is probably, I think it's like a $15,000 event nowadays. When I first started, it was $10,000 event, and I guess because of inflation, they moved it up. But that's the total prize money. So it's not what you win if you win the tournament. If you win the tournament, maybe you get $2 or $3 grand for the week, which is not a bad takeaway if you win. But most people aren't winning every week. Some people, you might lose first round and get $150, which is not, or $200, not going to cover your week's stay. So it's a mix. I mean, you're trying to get the results to bring it in. You're also trying to work with sponsors. It might be there's a certain club that will there's also things like you can play for clubs around France and Germany and places like that who will pay you to play matches for their club. So you can sort of earn a bit of some money to save and then go and travel for the summer. So it's a bit of a mix of kind of pooling resources and trying to cut costs as much as possible.
So I mean, I don't know your financials were, but clearly you were probably not making a ton of money.
Right.
Traveling from town to town, sleeping on it. You're working on this side project. I assume a side project at the time, in between training. Walk me through how you got the resources to invest in bags, because bags are not a cheap product to manufacture either.
Yeah. So it was it was a mix of, at the very beginning, not really spending much at all. I started to look out to see who in my area around London and the UK kind of knew about sort of soft goods design, and they put me in touch with a friend who became a friend of mine, who was very sort of involved with bag design and things like that. And so I started just to learn from them on the side as kind of friends, and they kind of show me. And I went to a lot of trade shows. So I go in between tournaments. I went to a trade show in Munich, which is kind of like it's a bit like the European version of Outdoor Retailer. So met a lot of suppliers there. Those suppliers probably thought I knew more of what I was doing than I was really doing. So they kind of allowed us to do some sampling. So it was a bit of like, say, at the beginning, very much kind of not really spending anything at all, but just kind of off the back of, people maybe thinking that there was something in this, or maybe not, but just kind of helping me out for the sake of it. And then we did a small crowdfunding campaign in end of 2019. It was a very small campaign because I really didn't know anything about marketing or any of that. So it was kind of I think we did maybe like 10 grand or something, which again was a little bit of money to start pushing things forward. And then actually we during the pandemic, we got even though I'd literally just started this company, we basically got a relief loan from the government, which kind of allowed us to put some money into more design, the first production run, things like that. So that it was almost it was a silver lining there over the pandemic that we actually got some money that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So it was kind of a mix of a variety of things. It was very scrappy.
Okay. You've got, how many SKUs do you have? You've got a fair amount of bags in a short period of time. Yeah,
I think we've got about, excluding colors, maybe 14 bags now. And we have like our main bags. We started with tennis. Tennis was, what I knew. So I very much started with tennis. But we had the idea I had around it was these sort of add-on accessories that could be for work or sport or travel, or for carrying your shoes or carrying your wet clothes or your laptop, and adding those on to the main bag depending on what you were kind of doing when you were traveling or that day. And that's kind of where we started. Actually, that's not even true. In fact, we started with a backpack that could have a racket add-on and all these sort of things. Kind of discovered that didn't really work. Rackets as in like an add-on bag was too heavy. It was like not going to work. So we ended up sort of going back. I ended up going back and starting with tennis as the base product and kind of going out from there. And then we that was kind of where it started. And I had some existing relationships with sort of a few retailers in the US from tennis, just from people I knew, sort of influencers and sort of more like product reviewers in the tennis space. That kind of helped us get a bit of initial marketing and people knowing about us. And then it kind of branched out. We kind of went more into other racket sports, like we've done for paddle, pickleball. Pickleball not so much, but paddle here in Europe, and then also just more sort of lifestyle, more general lifestyle bags.
I know nothing about the tennis bag market. Are there a fair amount of players like already in the space? Like, how are you differentiating your product?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is actually one of the reasons I started Cancha, is that when I was traveling with tennis bags, a lot of them broke on me. And the thing about the tennis industry is it's really interesting in the sense that it has been growing quite a lot as a sport, even though it's quite traditional sport. But a lot of the brands are actually quite traditional and even archaic in the way they do their marketing, still relying on sales reps around different countries and retail and with rackets and things, people need to demo them and try them out, and there's a kind of a very sort of old style marketing in that industry. And one thing I noticed with bags is that they weren't. If you look at, say, golf bags, for example, how kind of premium and amazing like the materials are and expensive they can get. There was none of that in tennis. There was cheapest stuff they could possibly get with logos plastered all over them, with the idea of like using it as a loss leader to sell tennis rackets and things like that. And a lot of the brands were what they did. And there's no innovation happening there, even though all this stuff was happening in the outdoors market and in other segments. So I kind of was frustrated myself because a lot of bags were breaking on me and ripping and things like that, but also because I kind of saw an opportunity where we could make something a lot better with really good materials in an industry that that just didn't have that at the time.
It is like, so Lacoste, is that how you pronounce it? They're like
Lacoste,
the largest. Yeah. Lacoste. Okay, so they're the largest tennis brand or tennis focused apparel brand that I'm aware of. Were they in the bag space as well, or was it going to be more of like the racket companies selling the bags as an accessory?
It tends to be the racket companies. What Lacoste has done, which is really interesting, is they're obviously a French brand, and there's a tennis racket brand called Technifiber and Lacoste, I think, has done sort of some sort of like merge partnership, owning them to some extent. So they kind of do it through them in terms of bags and things like that. But generally in the space in tennis, it's the racket brands make bags and things like that, and then there's apparel brands separately. And then when it goes to like player sponsorship side of things, which is basically how most brands sell anything in tennis, they basically just get a top player to use it and hope that it will sell. And is that like they usually have players under contracts and things like that, like very like strict contracts. Doesn't let you. So if we had a bag we wanted to give to a player, they wouldn't be allowed to accept it, because even if the brand doesn't make bags, they just don't want any other association with the brand. So that was obviously something I had to navigate as well. And so I just said, well, we're not going to be sponsoring any players. Like it's an expensive way of marketing anyway. So and with sort of the D2C side and e-commerce and all of that, there was another way of reaching people. So that was another part of it in tennis as well, is trying to innovate on the marketing side.
So how have you been able to grow? You kind of talked about the early wins with retailers and influencers in the review space. Was that a continued strategy, or did you lean into other channels?
I think that has been a continued strategy, certainly. I think what's interesting about us is that I can't say that one specific thing has worked wonders for us, in the sense that we certainly haven't like scaled to the moon on meta ads or had this amazing product gifting strategy or retail. Like, it's been chipping away and just trying to get better at everything. And I think potentially because sometimes for certain products, they can lend themselves well, for example, like say to TikTok shop or something, because it's like a low AOV and very repeatable purchase and very easy for somebody to decide to buy that on TikTok shop. I think for our product, it's a considered purchase. It's something that lasts a long time. People make a real decision on the bag, and they don't necessarily just convert then and there. So for us, it's been a kind of a mix of various different things and trying to find what works. I think it's been continually difficult on the acquisition side because of just how expensive, as everyone knows, it is. But I think what's really worked well for us is that we are very limited in how much we produce, and therefore on the email side of things, we've started to do quite a lot on sort of limited drops in terms of limited colorways of bags, and we've done sort of collaborations with other brands in the tennis space and outside of there, and basically creating hype around the product development side of things, which then when we launch a product, and so pre-orders as well, we've done a lot of different pre-orders of bags and things like that, and that kind of mix of kind of newness and limited drops and back in stock and all that sort of stuff has been a sort of an engine for us in terms of just getting people really interested in what we're doing and the process behind everything.
I was curious about this because so your average order value is probably what, a couple $100, $250,
Yeah.
something like that. And then are you seeing the cost for acquisition on Meta pretty high as well? Because we deal with a smaller price point. Our AOV is like $60, so we're trying to spend $30 to acquire a customer. I'm like, oh, it'd be nice if I could pay $150 to acquire a customer, but I assume like those costs are even higher for you because of the time frame.
Yes, and that's a really interesting point, because I think people often think like, oh, if I could just have a high AOV. Sometimes I think, oh, if I could just have a low AOV, like if I could just have something where people don't have to think about it so much, right? So I have this theory that it's just all quite elastic, in the sense that, like, I think that especially on Meta, I think that they will charge you as much as they think they can get out of you, depending on what, the price of your product and what the average person spends. So I almost think, I'm interested to think what you think, but my take is that it almost doesn't matter like what you're selling when it comes to the acquisition side of things from Meta and stuff like that. Maybe if you're like a subscription product, like on a very high cadence, and you're willing to kind of take that loss at the beginning. But if you're trying to be first order profitable, I almost think it doesn't matter what your AOV is, because I think that your acquisition costs are going to level out in relation to that. But yeah, I mean, have you seen it go up a lot over the time with your products?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm probably not the best person to speak on behalf of finding success on Meta. That's not really been a channel that has scaled to our expectations. We do try to be profitable on our orders as well, even though that may limit our growth potential. I think it's just a less stressful way to build a business, knowing that, hey, I've got this order, I'm going to make money on it, regardless, even if I'm doing fewer.
Yeah.
Are you seeing, is this the kind of product where it's like one and done? Are you able to get multiple orders from your customers? Because you talked about email marketing and limited drops and stuff like that. How is that going to work for a customer who only needs one bag, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think what we've been lucky with, which is a little bit different from maybe your average bag brand, and I sometimes wonder what other bag brands are doing, because they don't necessarily have this, but because we have this sort of modular aspect of our bags, we have different add-ons basically. Because of that, we tend to actually get quite a fairly good repeat purchase rate. And so either people bundle bags together, and we try and obviously incentivize that quite a lot. In terms of, we try and do things like sort of like a tennis travel bundle, which might have a tennis racket bag plus a bag for your laptop and your shoes and all those things, and then they add on and they combine and things like that. Or people come back and we launch new add-ons. So it's kind of that it's products that usually, whenever we're designing bags, I always try and think about, at least on like the accessories, like add-ons side of things, I want it to have utility in itself. Like, this is something that someone would buy on its own and they would use it on its own, but then it would also be something extremely useful for our existing customer base. And so the helpful part there is that we have people who come in and buy one of our, of our laptop bags or something, and use it just for that. And there are people, we have existing customers who want to use that with their existing bag and carry their laptop with their tennis rackets, and then they buy it, after having bought something earlier. So that's where I think we're a little bit different, and it's helped us a lot. And that's where kind of limited drops and stuff come into place, because a lot of customers also will give a lot of feedback, and that's what's been really good. Is that I've seen customers where, and I, for example, with the customer service, I still do a lot of that myself, because I think it's so important understanding, for at least us, what customers are looking for like new products from us, and what they're struggling to carry, or what they like, even the new other activities they do. That it's been really important for me to be involved in that, because it allows me to then understand from a product development perspective. Because some customers have spent quite a, north of $1,000-$2,000 on different bags over the last couple of years. So I think that's kind of where we've been a little bit been more lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I see this with our customers as well, or our passionate customers, kind of like our fanboys, where you do a limited drop. Like, I was looking at the Parisian blue. It's like a beautiful color you have there. Like, I would imagine someone who has the black bag and then they see that and they like the bag, they love the bag, and they love the color, like, they can't help but get both of them. Am I right? And then maybe they think about, well, I'll give this bag to one of my friends, or I'll sell it on eBay or something like that.
Yeah, I guess gifting is a big part of it. Coming around to things like Christmas, Black Friday, stuff like that, Father's Day, things like gifting seems to be a big part of it. But I think also I'm curious to hear what you think. But I mean, my own ethos is that people aren't sort of one-dimensional anymore, in the sense that I think people feel they can do a lot of different things nowadays, in the sense that they can be a mother or a father. They can also be really into their sport. They can be dedicated to their work. They can love to travel, and they can do these various different things. I think nowadays it's more okay to be sort of juggling different things at the same time, and so that we have customers who are really into tennis, but they're also outdoor, like they're really into outdoors, and they love going for hikes, and they love, we've got customers who play tennis and they also do marathons, and they go running, or it might be they travel a lot for work. So I think that's one benefit as well, is that I think that people aren't one-dimensional anymore. They do a lot of different things. They're quite, especially our customer base, are quite active. I think it's quite important to understand that as well when you launch new products, that they converge quite a bit in terms of interests and categories and things like that.
Well, I would challenge you not to go that direction. Like, they certainly do, and you can certainly make bags for all walks of life. I guess the question is, are you a court-based company, like in your name, or are you a bag company? And you have to decide that. You can't be both, in my opinion. So if you go down the court-based option, it's like, we make the best bags for sports that are contained in courts, or bags and accessories, and other things that will, commit to that life. But if I came in and I'm a consumer, and you're selling, hiking backpacks, and you have a photo of a dude like hiking up a hill, and then you have a photo of someone playing on the court, and I'll be like, you're just another like nothing brand, in my opinion. It's like, I don't get passionate about bags. No one gets passionate about bags. They get passionate about their sport. So I would recommend that, focus on the court, focus on tennis, on paddleball and pickleball, and how you can really cater to that life and just keep it to that. And that's where that's your game too. I mean, that's where you're from. Like, that's where your authority is. As an individual, as a former, traveling pro tennis player, like, you can speak to that. Ping pong, you could probably even get into ping pong too. Like, there's a YouTube channel like Pongfinity or something like that. They got like a couple million subscribers. And I'm sure there'd be people who, because you think about it, this sport, the tennis, like the costs are relatively low compared to a lot of other sports. You got your tennis shoes, you got your racket, and then, country club if you're in a country club. But, there's so many public courts out there as well, that you want to give your customers an excuse to continue to invest in a sport that they love. And I would say, like, you probably have options to even go like a higher price point, in my opinion, and really focus on like the people who are in the country club and, are spending thousands of dollars through that country club membership, and they want to look good at the country club, and they want to have the best. And the only way you do that is, like by upping your price point and having, products with features that are not accessible to them anywhere else. I would probably lean into that way if I were you, without knowing all the things that you know. So it's like just more from an outsider perspective. But
no, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's like that's really good advice. It's something I really have struggled with, because I think that also looking at what other brands are doing, not necessarily in tennis, obviously, because I think that the standard thing with tennis has been, obviously, you just go vertical in tennis. And I think, but looking at, say bag brands, someone like, say, Peak Design, for example, and they go from bags, they go to like camera mounts and tripods and outdoor bags, and like a luggage roller they launched on Kickstarter. So but obviously they're a massive company, they're a massive brand. So like, I'm not kind of compare myself too much to those to those brands. But I think it's always really difficult how to like understanding the sort of the roadmap on products and where you envisage the brand to be 10 years from now or 5 years from now from a product perspective. I mean, how do you approach that?
Well, I mean, I haven't looked at peak lately, but when I think of peak design, I think of catering to the camera community, and their bags are specifically made for people in that space, and then the accessories around that. So it's like, I mean, I think you could do really cool things like a collapsible tennis ball bag where, pack it up light or something and you roll it out and you can put, your 3 balls in or 5 balls or however many balls you need, or, something that allows, the balls to, like, maybe it has a vacuum pump on it. So it's like resealable. You put the balls back in, suck all the air out so they don't go flat on you. I think there's a ton of accessories that you could do that cater to this audience, but really just focus on the idea of racket sports is what I would do. I wouldn't mess around with anything. Like, there's a lot of products that you could do within this space, like, but it would just be like, we just focus on racket sports, and if you got a racket, we're going to serve you. And that would probably be my what is your mission for the company?
Yeah, I think my mission is to make. I think maybe it's a little bit broad, but I always think about it making sports travel more seamless, like a more seamless experience. So being able to travel for sport more easily is kind of how I think about it. And you could narrow that down and say traveling for tennis more easily. So I mean, but I think that's what it's about, is making it easier for people to travel and with their equipment and be active.
When you say travel, is the image, like, when I think of that, I think of going to, I guess, tournaments all around the country or all around the world, like major travel, flying, that kind of stuff. Is that also what you're envisioning?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think when I first started Cancha, because I was very much catering it to myself as a traveling athlete, I kind of originally saw it that way. But obviously the majority of our customers, even if they do love to travel, that's not what they're doing on a daily basis. What they're doing on a daily basis is going to work, going to play tennis before work or go in the morning. Maybe if we're in Europe, a lot of our customers in Europe are getting the train and buses, things like that. If they're in the US, maybe not so much, but still kind of that kind of more daily commuting side of things is more, I think, what we've kind of transitioned into.
So, like, when I would think about that, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, we take the pain out of getting to the court. Or, something like, you shouldn't burn out on your commute to the court, or something about like how there's pain in going to the court, and we solve that problem. And it's about getting to the court. It's not about travel, because when I think of travel, I'm like, all of a sudden is, well, I'm not doing tournaments. I just go to my country club down the road. They're not thinking travel, or at least here in American English, we want to think that. But if it's like, we make the process of getting to the court luxurious or painless, then it's like, oh, okay, like I can just grab my bag. It's like a go bag for all the preppers. They just have it all, they grab it and they go. I think that would be a lot more compelling and it applies to both parties, those who travel around the world and those who travel locally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it obviously enters into content as well, and I think that's something I've been following Beard Brand for quite a while. So I think one thing I think you do a lot of things really well, but something I think you do extraordinarily well is obviously your content on like YouTube and things like that, and how well it so well caters for your target customer. So I think like you just and how much like value it drives. I think it's really inspiring to see, quite honestly, because I think like it's not that easy to build up or to understand your customer that well and to create content that it continues to like drive values. I think it enters into content, but I think that's something obviously Beard Brand's done really, really well.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got tons of opportunity to create interesting content as well in tennis as like a professional athlete. Like it's, like that transition from professional athlete to YouTube is super common. Like even Tom Brady's doing it now. There was a picture with the Dodgers. Who did I forget his name? But you can like almost steal the content that Pongfinity is doing and apply it to the tennis court and start to just build a fan base of people who are super into tennis. And then you get to go out there and just play tennis, record videos, be like tennis trick shots. Like, can I hit the corner of the line? How many or how many takes is it going to take for me to hit the corner on the serve? And then you'd have a camera by the corner. And then there's a pro golfer who's doing that, who's hitting over his house, trying to get a hole in one. And he's like posting shorts every single day until he got it. And then he like upped his attempts. So day 1, he got 1 attempt. Day 2, he got 2 attempts, and so on. And then eventually he got that hole in one. So there's so many things you can do with your sport that, really presents a huge opportunity for your brand and where you're going. So I think the future is bright if you can leverage that. Are most of your customers in the States or in Europe?
Yeah, they are quite a lot in the States. I think we struggled a little bit with when we launched. Brexit in the UK happened, and it made it a little bit more difficult to sell to Europe, unfortunately. And so because of that, and because of my ties with the US anyway, having lived there, I kind of went to the US first and built up a lot of our customers there. And I think we're maybe about 60% of our orders are coming through the US. Most of our fulfillment is in the US, so we actually do it ourselves in the fulfillment, but most of that is in the US now. So but funnily enough, in Asia as well. So we don't do any marketing in Asia, but we have quite a few customers in, racket, especially the racket sports side of things, in Japan, Hong Kong, South Korea, Singapore, sort of Southeast Asia areas. There's a lot of interest in that. So yeah.
Well, that's cool. Where can people buy your bags, support you, follow you?
Yeah. So with mycancha.com, Cancha. So Cancha means court. I think I said in Spanish. So like my court. And then, also, I'm sharing, alongside David Lindell, who you've met, who's been on your podcast. And we do a little, not quite so professional podcast, but kind of just sharing our kind of ups and downs together and what we're going through, and starting our brands, and so that's called Underdog Ecom Podcast. So if everyone wants to have a listen to that, they can, and yeah. So I'm on Twitter as well. But yeah, check us out there.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I have. This has been another e-commerce conversations. Cheers, and keep on growing.